All right, in this problem, we're going to take a look at AP10B. And in this problem, we're looking at some payroll information, and we're going to be recording journal entries both for the um, employee salary expense and salaries payable, and also the tax expense or payroll tax expense for the business specifically. Okay. So let's look at some of the information here. In this company, May 15th, we prepared semi-monthly payroll, so twice a month. We have total hours worked by 3 different employees, an hourly rate by those employees, health insurance employee portion, so this is what the employees have to pay for their health insurance. And then it tells us that the employer pays half of the health care premium and the employees pay the other half. So these numbers right here are 1/2 of the total payment that has to be made. And then the appropriate deduction rates here are federal income taxes 9%, state income taxes 6%, FICA 7.65, FUTA 0.6%, SUTA 5.4%. Okay. And something to note here as well is that FUTA and SUTA are the unemployment taxes, and those are paid by the company, not by the employees. And it doesn't say it here, but something to note about the FICA taxes is that both the employer and the employee have to pay the same portion, basically. So 7.65 will be paid by the employees, and 7.65 will also be paid by the business. Okay. Cool. Okay, so let's dive in here. Move this up just a little bit. Give ourselves some room. Okay. So our first step is to prepare the payroll journal entries for May 15th to record the salaries payable and accrue the employer contributions. So yeah, let's go through, and I have this little table down here that's going to help us calculate everything out. Having a table like this is pretty essential for payroll problems because there's usually a lot to calculate. And so let's go ahead and fill out what we know. So we have the hours, 87.5, 85.5, 73.5. Okay. Then we have the rates, 1450, 15, and 1350. And then to get total pay, we just multiply those together, the hourly rate times the number of hours worked, and we can just drag our formula down and then sum up those totals. So the employees earned $3,543.50 for this payroll period. And then, as it mentioned here, they're going to be deducting $18, $20, and $14. So in total, that comes out to 52 for all that. And then it tells us, oh, let's fill out this. So here's a section to put these interest, to put the percentages in here. So for federal taxes, we're going to say it's 9%. So we'll just put 9% in there. For state taxes, it is 6%. For the FICA, it's 7.65. The FUTA is 0.6%, not 6%. You got to put an extra 0 in there. So 0.6% there. And the SUTA is 5.4. So be careful for those real small percentages. Sometimes you got to put it, don't confuse that and make it, 6% or 60. Excuse me, choking. Don't make that 60% or 6%, 0.6%. So about a little over, 1/2 of a percent, a little over that, 6/10, right? Okay, and what we're going to do with those percentages then is they're all going to be based off the total pay. And so we're going to multiply the total pay times that percentage. And since we're applying the same percentage to each one of the employees, go ahead and hit your F4 to lock that cell. So we're always going to reference this 9% and then drag it down. So the pay then, everyone's pay gets multiplied by the 9% there. You can see on those formulas. And then I'm just going to drag this across summation formulas. We're going to need that for each one. And then again, the same thing. I'm going to click up here, F4, to lock that cell, and then times the total pay, and then drag it down. And you can kind of get the gist for how that is working. So F4 times total pay. Same thing, and we're just doing this all the way across. And last one, the state unemployment tax. That went weird. Sorry. Oh, F4 times total pay. Okay, and now we've basically got all the information that we need listed out. And now we're going to go through and do the journal entries. And so our first journal entries then are just to accrue the payroll expense and the payables, etc. And so this is on, what is this, May 15th, 2018. And okay, so just to revisit what I said earlier, the FUTA and SUTA are employer only, not employee. And then the employer and the employee are both going to pay $271.08 of FICA taxes, right? So the first thing we want to put in is just our overall salaries expense, because this is the amount that we owe, we're paying the employees. And again, like I mentioned, that was the 3,500. I'll put decimals here so we can see how it all exactly matches up. So that's our total pay expense, is just the amount that they earned. This is really what we paid them. But then we're going to withhold back. We're not going to give them the rest of this money because we have to send it to our health insurance company, and then we have to send the other stuff to the government, basically. So let's go and start with federal income tax payable. And that number is going to be the $318.92. That's just here, right? That's that total. Then we've got the state income tax payable. Let me paint these. Okay, there we go. The state income tax payable is the $212.61. Then we've got FICA tax payable. So that's Social Security and Medicare. So we get that. Let's take our dollar signs out of our journal entry there. Okay, and then we've got the health insurance payable. So again, your employer they take your amount that you owe and they send it to the health insurance company. And finally, after accounting for all of the things that need to be held back from the employee's paycheck, because it's being remitted to these different government or the health insurance company, then the net amount of that is the expense minus all of these other things, essentially. 2668.89. And again, we could have done, that's actually not a bad idea. We could have had like a column down here for net paid, net amount of pay after deductions, etc. But that's okay. This works. So we'll type in record salaries and deductions. So then let's do this. That's our explanation. So this is the amount that they actually earned, the employees earned. This is the amount that they're going to get in cash on their checks. And then these are all the amounts that we keep for now, and then we have to send out to the government on the employee's behalf, and then the health insurance company on their behalf as well. Okay, now let's the same date, 5/15. So that's the employee part. Now the employer has to pay some taxes. That's us as the employer, and so we're gonna record not salaries expense, but employee benefits expense, we'll call it. And I'm just kind of following the book. That's what they say. I would actually probably split this out a little bit more, but into like taxes and health insurance expense, etc. But for our purposes, we're going to follow the book's lead. And here we go. So we have FICA taxes payable because, like I mentioned, the business and the employee both have to pay FICA taxes. And then we've got the FUTA payable, and we've got the SUTA payable. And then we've also, again, I'll just link up to this because I already typed it. We've also got the health insurance portion, right? And let me format paint these. Because as it mentioned in the problem, half of the health insurance expense is paid by the employee and half is paid by the business. Usually in the real world, the business pays a lot more of the health insurance premiums than the employee. But for this one, we're just assuming half and half. And so we can just link up because that's the same number, right? We're paying half and half, or in other words, we're paying the same amount for the health insurance, the business and the employees. The business and the employees are both paying the same amount for the FICA taxes. That's just like, this is a real thing that businesses have to pay half and the employee pays half of FICA taxes. Health insurance, that's just depends on how much the company pays, etc. This one's not set like half and half or anything. That's just what the problem told us. And then the FUTA payable is off of our amount down there. And same thing with the SUTA. And then if we add all those together, the total cost of our payroll tax, employee benefits expense, let's say, comes out to $535.69 just by adding all those together. And then the business has to remit this portion also to these government agencies and then to the health insurance company. We'll send that money out here. And I think that's actually, okay, yeah, we have to actually record those journal entries now. Okay, so this was payday. This was, again, the amount that employees earned, but this was the amount that we actually gave them in cash. And we now have these other liabilities that we need to remit. And then this is our portion of the liabilities for the payroll taxes and the health insurance here that we also need to remit, right? And so it tells us on the 17th, here, May 17th, 2018, prepare the journal entry to pay the employees. So all we need to do at this point is we're just getting rid of our liabilities now. And so, as you might imagine, we have cash going down and salaries payable going away. So this is us paying the employees. Oh, shoot. You know what? Let me put my explanation on there. Let me move this all down. I need to fix the links, but let's do our, sorry. Okay, let's put our explanation in here and we'll say record payroll taxes and health insurance expense. Okay, now let's try that again. So now when we actually pay the employees, we reduce our liability to them and we record, we pay them cash, right? That's how that works. So we're just say pay employees. So this is them actually getting checks. And then here I'm just going to copy that in so we have the format. On the 31st for part C, it says prepare the entry to pay the liability to the health insurance company. So that's going to be a reduction in the health insurance payable. We needed to pay it and now it's being paid, so it's going away. And it's going to be the sum of the amount from the employees and our portion, or in total $104. Okay. So we have enough space here. And we got one more thing to do. Now we need to prepare the entry to pay the liabilities to the government. Actually, with that said, let me move this down so I have a little more space. Again, on your version, you won't see this problem, I don't think, but I think I might run out of space otherwise. Okay, so now it says on June 15th, now it's been, later on, we're going to need to remit these amounts. And so this is going to be all these different payables that we need to actually pay, right? So cash is going to go down, but let's look at all the payables that we have. So we have federal income tax payable, we have state income taxes payable, FICA, and that one's also for the employer. So there's two amounts there to record. And then we've also got on the employer side, FUTA and SUTA. Okay. And that should be everything, right? We had the payables for the salaries, we paid the employees right away. We had the health insurance payable that we sent, at the end of that month. And then later on, we're making this, we're remitting to the government. And yeah, let's do format painter. Okay, I had exactly enough space there for that. And we'll say to remit liabilities. Let's say to remit government payroll liabilities, right? So we're sending the cash to the government now that we withheld from the employees' paychecks, and also the part that we owe as well. And so the federal income taxes on the employee's behalf is $318.92. State income tax for the employee is $212.61. The FICA payable is the combination of the employer and the employee, so $542.16. Be sure to get both of those. And then the FUTA is just the employer, so nothing up here to grab. And then the SUTA portion, the same thing, down $191.35. And then the total cash that we need to pay out to the government entities then is $1,286.29 in total. And you can kind of see, maybe you've never really thought about this before, but like when you get when you filing your taxes at the end of the year, and you've got your W-2 form, and you're looking to see how much taxes you paid, that amount that you have for federal and state income taxes on your tax return is the amount of cash that your employer has been withholding, right? So if you got a refund, it would be you just getting this money back eventually, now, like later when you file your taxes. If you didn't owe any taxes or something at the end, I was actually overpaid or whatever, and you're getting a refund, it would just be the government returning this amount the employee originally withheld on your behalf, essentially, right? So it's just one of those things that I think that we all kind of take for granted how the mechanics work. So maybe that's a little bit illuminating. So hopefully kind of interesting, something that affects a lot of us. Sometimes some of these accounting concepts are not as applicable in your day-to-day life, but things like payroll taxes definitely are very much applicable for most of us. So okay, and that's all the journal entries related to the payroll and the tax liabilities, and remitting those amounts and paying the employees, and also paying the health insurance part to the health insurance company. So all right, well, hopefully you found that helpful, and appreciate you guys following along, and we'll see you in the next video for AP 11B. All right, thanks everybody.